Welcome to Incubate's Q&A show. Today we're going to discuss express entry, but we're not going to make an actual show. What we're going to do is we're going to have questions and answers that we have received through emails or phone calls from our clients from all over the world asking us questions about the express entry system in Canada. So we're going to take the most common questions that we've received, the ones that we feel that are important for people to know, because we've seen a lot of repeated questions coming in over and over, whether it is there's a confusion when it comes to these questions or there's a certain point that they would like to know more about, and then we will be able to answer that during our show. Well, please do not treat this as legal consultation. You still need to do your homework. You still need to do your due diligence and research. Please seek your legal consultation directly for your case from an attorney, legal representative such as an immigration consultant or a notary in Quebec. So the questions we're going to go over today, again, are about the express entry system in Canada. Now, under express entry system, there's multiple programs, which these questions are actually going to address as we go through the whole entire process and the main points that people ask about. So the first question that we received is, so what is express entry? What is the program? We don't understand what express entry is based on what we have done before when it comes to immigration to Canada as a skilled federal worker. So, express entry is a program that was introduced in January of 2015 by the Canadian government to replace its ancestor program, which is the skilled federal worker that allowed you to apply for permanent residency under. Now, there is a new system called express entry, which is a points-based system. So, candidates will go ahead and apply. They will open up a profile in the system. They will receive a certain amount of points based on different factors, and then that system becomes an online system, a big repository of all the candidates that applied for whether it is the skilled federal worker or the skilled federal trades program or other available programs under express entry. And then they will sit in different categories or different pools for them to be able to be ranked and receive permanent residency for the highest achievers that are sitting in these pools whenever there's a selection that happens. Okay, so the next question was, how do candidates get ranked, or how do candidates get points in the system? So, as I was mentioning, there are factors, or there are different categories where you would be able to receive a certain amount of points based on that specific category, such as, for an example, your age. Another factor would be is your level of education, your highest level of education, the number of years of experience that you have received, any adaptability points that you could have from the skills that you can bring into Canada when you immigrate here. For an example, if you have any family in Canada, if you're married and your spouse is going to be accompanying you to Canada. And of course, if maybe you have a job offer, which is not required, but again, you would be receiving points for having a job offer from a Canadian employer if you receive that and you added it to your express entry profile. So how do you get ranked? It all depends on the total number of points that you can receive in the system. Meaning, there is something called CRS, or the Comprehensive Ranking System. It is part of express entry, and is the way that all these points are being collected together in order to come up with the final score that you have, which becomes your express entry total score that enters into your profile, and then you continue throughout the year as you get through one draw to another when the Canadian government makes their selection on a monthly basis, or sometimes more than monthly, for example, twice a month for them to select the candidates. The next question was, so what is a pool, or what is the grouping system that happens? So a pool, think about it as a group of candidates that sit in the same bucket based on their occupation. So in Canada, there's something called an NOC, or a National Occupational Classification System. So there are multiple jobs, multiple job titles, and there are different duties that get executed or done on a daily basis, part of that job or that position. The NOC system allows the Canadian government or employers in Canada to classify each job under a specific NOC code. So you can be sitting in a managerial position or in a professional job or whatever it is that you have, and then based on the types of positions that you have, you'll be assigned a specific NOC code. Now, this NOC code allows you to go into a specific pool, and then you will be ranked in that pool based on the points that you have achieved, and then you will be able to compete against other candidates in the same pool, and then the highest score will be able to be selected based on the draws that happen part of the express entry system. So the next question that we have received is related to the languages. So what languages can be considered under the Federal Skilled Worker or the Federal Skilled Trade Program in Express Entry? Canada has two main languages, English and French. Now, you can speak one of the two languages or you can speak both languages. Remember that Express Entry is a points-based system, meaning you receive more points based on the number of languages or the level of proficiency that you have in each language and the number of languages that you speak to get more points. So, English and French, or both, and then the level of proficiency that you have in each one of these languages will allow you to be eligible for the Express Entry system. Now, you have to test your language. There are certain approved exams or tests by the government to be able to consider your language proficiency. So for an English, they've got, for an example, IELTS. This is one of the most common ones. And then for French, this is something called TEF or TEF. So you can test out your IELTS, your English through IELTS. You can test out your French through TEF. And then with that, you will be able then to rank from your language proficiency perspective against other candidates and receive points for that. And then it goes under your system or your profile. So the next question was the following. How good does my English or French have to be? So we discussed how you get tested in terms of your language proficiency. We talked about the different exams that you can go through. Now we're going to talk about the fact that your level of English or your level of French will determine how many points you'll be able to receive part of the Express Entry profile you're going to open up, whether it is for skilled or the federal worker or skilled federal trades. So in Canada, there is something called CLB, or the Canadian Language Benchmark. Think about it as a system for Canada to be able to gauge language proficiency based on Canadian standards in comparison to other international locations or other international systems. So for an example, if you take an IELTS exam, or if you take a TEF exam, or if you take a CELPIP exam, and then you want to see how that gauges or compares to a level of language in Canada, you would convert that score into something called a CLB score. Now, for you to be eligible to apply for the Skilled Federal Worker Program under Express Entry, you need to have CLB 7, which is Canadian Language Benchmark 7. On the other hand, you have your IELTS exam and the scores that you have received. So don't confuse your IELTS results or or your IELTS score for each one of the 4 brackets, the reading, writing, and speaking and listening, don't confuse that score with the CLB level or the CLB level score that's required. So when we say CLB 7, that does not mean IELTS 7. There's a comparison chart and there's an actual conversion chart that says if you score this much in IELTS, it actually equalizes to the following from a CLB perspective. Example, if you score IELTS level 6 in all the 4 brackets, then that converts to CLB level 7. So for you to qualify for express entry federal skilled trades, for a federal skilled worker, you need to have IELTS score 6 converts to CLB 7, and then you'll be able to apply for the skilled federal worker program under express entry. For the skilled federal trades program under express entry, you need to have CLB level 5 for speaking and listening, and you need to have CLB level 4 for reading and writing. So these are 2 programs that are under express entry. And then for federal skilled worker, there is a language proficiency, which is a little bit higher than the federal skilled trades program, which has lower English or French proficiency levels. So the next question was the following. If I score CLB 7 or CLB level 7, am I going to be selected in the express entry system for skilled federal worker? The answer is maybe. You need to remember that this is a points-based system. This is not an on and off switch. If I meet the requirements, the minimum requirements, I'm in. No, you have to collect points. So if you score CLB 7 or level 7, you're going to get a certain amount of points for your for your language. Now, there's also 8 and there is also 9. The higher your English or your French proficiency, the more points you will receive. You should not just aim at achieving the minimum amount of points which is granted through getting CLB 7. You should aim at CLB 8 or even 9 if possible. Study English, study French. Make sure that you're proficient in the language so that you can gather more points. The more points you have, the higher your CRS score is, and then the more chances that you're going to get in getting selected whenever they have the monthly draws or whenever there's a draw based on your specific pool or if there's a general draw for everybody that's in the system. So, the next question. What fields can I apply under, or what proficiencies can I apply under, and are there any limitations? So, for the Federal Skilled Worker Program under Express Entry, there are 3 buckets that you can apply under. NOC Level 0, NOC Type A, and NOC Type B. What's the difference between these 3? NOC level 0 is managerial jobs. So if you have a managerial job in your profession, you will be at the skill level 0. If you have a professional job, then you will be able to go under the NOC A category. If you have a technical job, you would be falling under the NOC B category. So managerial, professional, and technical jobs, level 0, A, and B of the NOC code, these 3 fall under the Skilled Federal Worker Program, and you'll be able to apply under that for express entry. Of course, you have your Federal Skilled Trades program as well under express entry, and these are for the more of a I have a skill that I can do, which I'll be able to provide. So, for example, if you're a carpenter, if you're a let's say like a butcher or a cook or something like that, you'll be able to fall under the Skilled Federal Trades program and go through the system over there. So, the next question that we received is, what are the steps or what are the phases of applying for express entry or applying for one of the two programs, federal skilled trades or federal skilled worker under express entry. There are three main steps or three main, I want to say, phases that you go under when it comes to applying or opening a profile in express entry. The first step is to prepare your documents. There are certain documents that you need to have since day one. Without these documents, you can't even proceed. You can't even open a profile. So, you gather all your documents, you go through the checklist to make sure everything is available. But mainly, the two things that will usually take a lot of time to obtain is, number one, your English or your French proficiency exam. So you need to take your IELTS, you need to take your TEF exam, you need to get your results. And number two, your ECA, or your Educational Credential Assessment. Think about an ECA as a way to gauge your foreign education, your education that was obtained outside of Canada, and equalizing that to Canadian standards. So if you have a bachelor outside of Canada, what does that mean? Is it also a bachelor inside Canada, or is it a different level, higher or lower? Same thing with your master's or your MBA or your PhD. How does that scale to Canadian standards? So you need to obtain your ECA. You need to obtain your language proficiency exam results, and then the other documents as well, and then you'll be able to proceed to phase two. So the second step is to open your express entry profile. Put all your documents in, put all your information in, plug in all the different factors, answer all the questions in the profile, get that ready for you to be able to go through the system, and then you receive your CRS score, and then you wait. What do you wait for? For phase three to happen. Getting selected. Going through different draws, and then getting your score picked out of a specific draw and say you are now invited to apply for your permanent residency. Now, when I say you're invited to apply to permanent residency, that is something called an ITA, an invitation to apply. In express entry, you don't really apply for permanent residency since day one. You actually show your intent to apply, or your intent to wanting to apply for permanent residency, and then after you get selected, this is when you apply for permanent residency. Okay? So these are the major steps. Get your documents done, create your profile, get your CRS score, wait, get your invitation to apply, and submit your permanent residency application for that PR application to be processed. So the next question was the following. How long does it take to complete the process for applying to express entry and then going through the whole entire system? So it, again, all depends. You have steps that you have to go through. You have to go through different phases, progress from one level to another, until you finally achieve your ultimate objective of obtaining your permanent residency. So how long does it take? How long does the process take? Well, from which point are you considering to start counting? From the day that you open your profile, from the day that you get selected, or from the day that you actually start preparing your documents? What you need to understand is this. The government says, I am going to apply certain standards to the express entry profile and anybody that goes into that system. The government says they will process in 6 months or less every PR application they receive from express entry. So it takes 6 months for processing from the day you apply for permanent residency. But then when does that happen in the 3 steps that we talked about? You need to start backtracking at that point. So from this point on, it's 6 months. From the day that you apply for permanent residency onwards, it's 6 months. It takes 60 days for you to submit your, up to 60 days for you to submit your permanent residency application from the day that you receive your ITA or your invitation to apply. So now you have 6 months plus 60 days prior to that. Okay, so then when do I receive my ITA? When can I apply? Well, that depends on your score. That depends on your CRS total points. Okay, you might be sitting in a pool for a few days or weeks or even months. It depends on your score and how that is being ranked against other candidates in your pool, and then how the draws are being done every single month, how many invitations are being sent out, how many candidates are being selected, and then what is the minimum score that is being agreed on every single month based on the number of applications that are being pulled. So the government says, I want 1,000 people or the highest 1,000 scores for this month, and they go out there, they calculate the number of people that are sitting there in these scores, then they take them in. And then they see what the lowest score is going to be, and then anybody at that low score and above will be selected. And then the process continues every single draw. Now, candidates are applying, but at the same time, others are being picked, and then more apply, and then they're being picked. So the minimum score it just keeps fluctuating on a monthly basis. You need to make sure that you are close to that average or close to that median, that based on historic draws or data from previous draws, you know that it is close enough. If you're sitting in that range, you're probably going to be selected just in a few weeks. But if you're sitting at a lower range than what the current score is, maybe you have to stay longer in the system. Now, when you open up your Express Entry profile, you can keep it open for a year. Any time within this year could be selected, or maybe not. After it expires, you can actually renew it for another year and open your profile for another year, so then now you're sitting there for 2 years. So anytime within the first year, depending on your score, you can be picked. On 2 years, you can be picked. And then your IELTS or your TEF exam language results would expire. You have to take the exam again, upload it to your profile, and then continue. So, how long does it take? Nobody really knows, because it might be 1 or 2 weeks from the day you open your profile, or it might be a few months or more. You need to make sure that you keep an eye on your score and every single draw that happens, and what is the minimum score. What is your score and what is the minimum score every single month? Am I close or not? If I'm not close, what do I need to do to increase my points? Do I need to study English? Do I need to study French? Do I need to gather more work experience? Am I married? Does my spouse need to take a certain English or language exam? Does my spouse need to gather more let's say experience? So all these things you start considering to increase your score. But from the day that you get selected, you have 60 days to submit your PR application, and then from the day that you submit the PR application, the government is going to take 6 months or less to process it. So my advice at this point is keep an eye on your score, check every single draw. Always keep yourself updated with what's happening when it comes to these draws. The CIC website publishes all this information, every single draw that happens, so you can keep yourself updated on a monthly basis when it comes to what's happening in the Express Entry system. So, the next question was, so who's going to be selected, or who should apply for Express Entry? Well, you have to assess yourself based on the various factors that come into play when it comes to an Express Entry profile. Language, your age, your marital status, your education level, etc., etc. You check all that. You do an assessment for your CRS score. You see where you're going to be at today and what you need to do to increase these points. But generally, what you need to understand is the following. The Federal Skilled Worker and the Federal Skilled Trades programs are economic-based immigration programs. What does that mean? The government wants immigrants to come to Canada to be able to settle, to be able to establish themselves economically in the country. to contribute to the local economy. That means they're looking for the best of the best. This is a skilled worker immigration program. This is not an investment program. So what you're doing is you're using your skill set and your profile to be able to move to the country and be able to contribute to its economy. So, cream of the crop, the top level of every single point of time where there's a draw, that's the group that's going to be selected. What does that mean to you? And then to the person that asked that question, okay, so then who gets selected? Well, think about it this way. A person with a bachelor versus a person with a master's or a PhD, they will receive more points than that. A person that has 5 to 6 years of experience versus a person that has 1 to 2 years of experience, the more work experience will give you more points. If you have a family in Canada versus you don't have any immediate family in Canada, having family gives you more points. If your age is less than 35 versus your age is over, let's say 45, you would be receiving more points for your young age versus the higher your age, the less points you receive. So you have to consider the fact that the younger you are, the more work experience you have, the higher education level that you have, the more established you can be in Canada, whether it is with your spouse, if your spouse has the same credentials as you, if you have family in Canada, all that will give you more points. You will have a much better profile and higher chances of being selected than, let's say, a fresh graduate with a bachelor degree with only 1 to 2 years of experience, no family in Canada, and basic level of English. So that person could potentially qualify, could potentially enter the system, but they might not be selected. So that candidate will have to work on increasing their points until they're able to flip over to go to the other side where you have more points for experience, language, and education. So study your profile, do your self-assessment when it comes to your CRS scores, see what you need to do, and then focus on the main factors that will contribute towards your score when it comes to express entry. Next question that we received was the following. So, can I apply for express entry by myself, or do I need to hire somebody to assist me or do that for me? Now, this is an interesting question here. There's no such thing as a right or wrong approach. You could potentially do this by yourself. You can have a family member or a friend assist you in creating your profile, assuming that you declare that part of your application. Or you can hire a professional or an authorized representative to do that on your behalf. So hiring somebody or getting somebody's assistance doesn't really give you better chances in getting selected. It doesn't really give you additional privilege of being selected under express entry. But at the same time, you need to understand that you might not be fully proficient in the immigration laws in Canada. So you need to consider that maybe hiring a professional or an authorized representative will give you that boost when it comes to the accuracy of the information, the way that you're going to answer all that question is going to be accurate. You're not going to fall in any of the traps of misrepresentation or answering something wrong, and that's going to affect your score, etc., etc. So being guided by, or even if you have somebody that do all that on your behalf, could be potentially a good way for you to make sure that your profile is set up right, and later on when you apply for your permanent residency, that is also going to be according to the immigration laws and regulations for the Canadian system. And the final question that we've received when it comes to express entry is the following. So what if I don't qualify for express entry? Whether it is federal skilled worker or federal skilled trades, what do I do? Okay. So what you need to know is this: you have options. The Canadian immigration system has many different programs or many different schemes that you can go through in order to achieve your permanent residency. If you don't qualify for express entry, at this point of your career, or at this point of your life, what you could potentially consider is say, hey, okay, so I don't qualify right now. What do I do? Great. Come to Canada and study. If your English is not that good, come to Canada and study English. If you only have a high school degree, come and study your bachelor in Canada. I already have my bachelor. Okay, great. Why don't you come do your master's or your MBA in Canada? Or even if you have your master's or MBA, why don't you come and do your PhD here? Through your Canadian education, you could potentially apply for permanent residency because you have gained Canadian education, and then after you graduate, you can potentially receive your postgraduate work permit, study in Canada for 1 year within the first 3 years after you graduate, and then apply for the permanent residency under CEC or the Canadian Experience class. So this is an option or another path for you in order to be able to gain more experience, more knowledge, more education, and at the same time receive permanent residency through a different program. So just because you don't qualify for express entry, it does not mean that it's a dead end. There are other avenues for you, and there are other immigration programs that you can apply under. So I hope these questions and answers were beneficial for you. We look forward to receiving more questions from you, whether it is by calling us or whether it is by sending us emails, and then we'll be more than happy to take these questions and then continue answering them as we go. Again, you can ask us any question when it comes, any questions regarding Canadian immigration or even U.S. immigration or other global citizenship programs that Incubate will be able to assist you